Yo, JT Mac, we ain't talking about that other thing. I'm gonna bring you on. We ain't talking about that other thing. We're gonna discuss that tonight, but we're not touching that. We're not gonna touch. We're not, don't bring up that other stuff. I'm bringing you on.
No, no, brother Berean, I wasn't ready to get into no controversial stuff. I came on to just to talk about what you guys were talking about. The I don't know if you guys seen. I'm glad you said you're getting into that tonight too. I'll be looking out for that. But
Oh yeah,
I'm
definitely.
I don't know if you guys seen, but maybe it was like early 2010s, or in the middle. What's his name? What's his name? Pastor Gino. Gino had debated some NOI members. Have y'all
Oh
seen that?
yeah, he did bring them. You sure right? They wanted Richardson. Somebody was throwing around Richardson and Damon having a debate. Somebody was throwing that around.
Yeah, and it's actually
I'm gonna
pretty
tell you
good.
right now. I'm gonna tell you right. They're two different. Those are two different type of people. Geno Jennings don't want. He'll sit down. But what's that rapper? That whatever that West End rapper. They dragged him off the stage. That singer and the gay pastor in the Nation of Islam. I don't think they want to debate him. Geno don't want to debate him. And he was another one. He'll think that he knows something, but he don't have no seminary training. Certain stuff that he say, he don't have no training. So
Right.
he say you could tell he's ignorant. Don't mean you dumb. You just ignorant in that area. You think you know it, but you don't know it.
Right. Gino brags about not having, formal training, and
Yeah, and he glad
The
about
Holy
it.
Spirit taught him. See, he got that same thing that the Israelites, some of these Israelites
He
running
got
around here
too
saying.
and he got too much. Ain't no church like this church. Can't nobody preach it. Basically, Gino telling you, if it ain't coming from his pulpit, ain't preaching the truth. Nobody preaching the truth but him. That's a
Right.
problem. Once you get around people like that, that's a serious problem. Them other
But
dudes say, oh, IUIC, if it ain't of IUIC, it ain't of the boy, that's a serious problem. Those are warning signs.
right.
God ain't gonna trust his truth with one group of fools. Oh, that bother y'all. Oh, that bother y'all. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but that debate was pretty good because number one, like what Dunamis was saying, the guys that did come, members of the NOI, they made it clear that they did not speak for the nation, that they were there representing themselves. So I think that was key. And it was like maybe it was a group of them because he had invited all of them. He said, "Y'all come up here and sit in the pulpit," and
Yeah, respect. Yeah, matter of fact, I got to put you.
yeah,
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
yeah. If you can,
He'll
if
try to. Yeah, absolutely. I do remember seeing that whole thing. Hold on a minute, Pastor
okay,
Gino knows Vanessa. You special. You come around there. You always talking special, and we love you, sister. Pastor Gino knows whom Israel are, and he don't want his church to be closed. I'm gonna just leave that alone. Matter of fact, my sister said right there, people laughing. Fair use.
This is what's evidence for them. The Master Fard Muhammad told uh, uh, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad these things. That's evidence for them. And yet we're deceived and brainwashed. Y'all better go sit down somewhere. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Anytime you appropriate somebody's history and culture, it is identity theft. It's exactly what it is. No, he actually didn't. Ben-Ami Ben Israel in Chicago actually didn't start the idea. I mean, you find the idea, uh, you know, in the late 19th century with Frank Cherry and William Crowley, so forth and so on, long before him. Long before him. I mean, when did he even leave Chicago and do Aliyah to Israel? I think it was like in the 70s. So yeah, he didn't start the idea. See, again, that's a ridiculous question. Where are the real Jewish people today? They're everywhere. Like, how many times do we need to say this?
And people would say that that's a talking point. Those are questions that Israelites ask that's irrelevant. I can't say it's irrelevant. He said it's ridiculous. If they're everywhere, I guess some of y'all would say, well, how are they represented in America? How are they represented in America? And y'all would think that every Jew in America, every congregation in America, every assembly in America is, and for the last 20, 30, 40 years has been all European. We do know that some of the earlier Israelites wanted to make contact with European congregational Ashkenazi, what we call congregation. Ashkenazi congregations treated them funny. I brought up the girl the other day. I brought the girl up the other day, and they and she's talking about racism. That like the other guy was like, "What are you doing here?" And the little girl had a substitute teacher, and she was running back to her classroom in a Jewish school, and he said, "Well, what are you doing here? Like this ain't your class." And she's like, "That's when she knew she was as a black Jew, she was different." Is that why y'all don't want to be among them? Because y'all don't want to deal with them folk.
They are no particular color. They have no particular genetic features. Everywhere that you find where Jewish people went in the diaspora, in the scattering, you find them actually also intermingling with those groups and therefore becoming part of those populations while maintaining their distinct Jewishness in heritage as well as in genetics.
Is that true? How do y'all work with that? Because y'all say that Jews were all black in Portugal and Spain, right? That's what y'all teach, right? They were all black people, and the white church wanted to make them eat pork. The white church wanted to persecute them. That's what y'all teach, right? I want to make sure this is what y'all teach. I want to make sure this is what y'all teach. They were. Oh, I know they were not. None of us teach that. The church don't believe that, but they don't say that they were the same color people. I've met two Israelites that say there were black Jews and white Jews there, Covey in Portugal and Spain. So I said, well, how do you distinguish the? Let me play the lady with the flute. I can't even talk good. Now I'm finna play the lady with the flute. I'm finna play flute lady. Let me let it play.
Hey, Berean, can I say something? I don't know if you pause for me or not.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay.
Y'all. I'm looking at sister. I'm trying to figure out what she makes our conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, as we all know, especially in ancient times, Jews or Hebrews being different shades and of colors and whatnot, even going up to modern times. Only I think it's only a westernized viewpoint of colorism, white, black, and unfortunately, a lot of our people have, you know, fell into that trap too, the colorism. So they see everything through the lens of color. Everything, if the Jews in Portugal or whatever, they all got to be black or they got to be white. They can't be anything else. They can't be brown. I, I, you
That's
know,
how come. That's how come they feel. That's how come they feel these people are misappropriating sources and using and basically taking them light skinned Jew sources and using them to their advantage in the awakening.
right,
It's a mess. That's how we got to look through a lot of stuff. But go ahead.
right, and so to the whole thing, there's not a whole lot that I disagree with Damon on. I mean, he presented a lot of facts and whatnot. I just felt some kind of way about him not taking taking the opportunity to build with the YAP game. That those guys study DNA. You know what I'm saying? And I think that something good could have really came out of that. With him bringing his you know, his scholastic background, and the YAP gang bringing the DNA together, and they could have really built something together. But
maybe they don't do nothing. Maybe I don't know. I remember the other one brother came on, and I was getting ready to tell him. I was trying to tell Richard. I was like, no, because I think he run with YAP, and I was like, no, this dude right here. I think I trust what he's saying as far as that DNA. He said, well, are you familiar with the? He was trying. Richardson's stupid. He was trying to ask him, yo, are you familiar with the work of, I forget the guy name, maybe Orthodox Moor tell me. He said, are you familiar with the work of this other man? You know, he said, are you familiar with Wayne State peer review? He wow, he ain't give him a time to talk or nothing. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. But I just let him rock out because I figured it was gonna lead to something. I'm like, oh, he ready to get him that work now. Polite never want to debate. He got it on with Richard Carrier. They said he won that. Polite ran. They said, you know, this is what the streets are saying. So I'm figuring that everything okay. After a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I'm like, dang, then YAP gang done dropped the video. This fool Dante done dropped the video on Fervent Charity, calling me, dropping articles, sending me articles, coming online reading. I'm like, oh man, this ain't a good look. Man, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4. I said, what is going on here? I tell y'all, I feel some type of way.
Well, maybe he thought the YAP gang and everybody else would run like, you know, Polite ran. And, you know, I hate to say this, I'm like Minister Keaton, when you sell wolf tickets, brother, you got to stand on it.
Yeah.
But I think, for one thing, allegedly, I'm going to put that in there, maybe I'll cover it up. From what I've seen from YAP gang, it ain't no hustle. You know what I'm saying? They ain't trying to hustle folks. They just trying to present information, do research into it. Let's dig it out. Let's have dialogue. Let's see where we can go from here. Let's build. Some folks is just a hustle.
I agree.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that part right there, the dialogue part. Like, we don't even need to have a debate, right? Like, so because YAP gang has a whole different view than what most than the BHI community, right? We're not saying that all African Americans are Israelites. We're saying some, right? We're saying that the information points to some people having a link to this culture in West Africa, right? And so
that's the problem right there. YAP gang can help the awakening more than anything else, but everybody's not going to be, because they're not saying everybody. The more the numbers, the more the money. So no matter what the facts say, I got to say everybody that came over here is transatlantic slave trade. YAP gang ain't doing that. They're saying according to the information, they want to have reasonable, sensible dialogue. They're not even saying debate. Because debate turned into a whole big show. They're just saying, let's just talk some of this stuff out. Who want to do that?
I'm gonna keep it a buck. Some folk want to debate, like, and there was a time I wanted to debate Damon Richardson, right? But like right now, like, so, it's important to understand the distinct positions and the nuance in positions and whatnot, and understand where we can have dialogue and whatnot. Because something YAP also is talking about, like, so I'm somebody who looks for material culture in West Africa and in the Americas and whatnot, right? And what the material culture looks like is in the same places where you find people who would have like a Hebrew background. You also find pre-colonial Christianity in West Africa, right? And so there's nothing to beef about. We can be like, oh, you know what? The information points to a Christian culture in West Africa. We can point to some Hebrew culture in West Africa. We can even point to Islamic culture in West Africa, right? We can point to spiritual traditions. Like, we can sit down and have a real a good dialogue and put the sources on the table and really teach the people a history that they don't really understand and whatnot, right? And so I definitely want to put that out there for Damon Richardson, like, if for the future and whatnot. If you want to sit down and have a dialogue with him, man, we would love to. I know for a fact I would love to, because they don't got to be a beef thing, because there's people, like, so for instance, we're talking about scholars and whatnot, right? There's scholars he respects 100%, like Vince Bantu, that says the same thing, right? And on the Jude 3 project, when they're having like panel shows and whatnot. If you want, we can like, when you're done with this, if you're okay with it, we can share the video where he's literally talking about the sources that break down Christianity, West Africa. But he also says, you know what, there's some evidence, not a lot, but he'll say there's a little evidence for Hebrews being in West Africa, right?
Oh, you talking about Vince Bantu and the lady on Jude 3 and that other?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Sure enough, that's how. Oh man, let me leave that alone. But they brought that up, so for somebody else to come and say something different, we gotta. I don't know. We gotta figure this thing out. You sure right about that?
Hey, Moore, I have a question for you, real quick.
Do me a favor, Dunamis. You seen that back chat, right?
Yeah, but I'm about to jump off. I jumped on for as long as I could. I just had a quick question for Moore. Then I'm gonna jump off.
Yes, sir.
More when you hear, now this might be off topic, but when you hear knowledge of self, how do you understand? What do you understand that to mean?
Dunamis, why don't I like you?
So I know that like in two different ways. I know that about in like the conscious community concept in terms of like there's the two sides to the coin. It's like terms of like having knowledge of self. Like some people talk about it in terms of like a national identity or having an identity in terms of like figuring out your history, whatnot. And some people talk about it in a spiritual sense, in the sense of like know thyself, right? Like in an esoteric way, and becoming closer to your creator, and however you connect to that. But when I hear it, typically when I
you've heard the conversation
I hear the nationalism side. Go ahead.
Yeah. So from the conversation we've had on this, I don't know if you heard someone what. How do you?
Yeah, I've been hearing Bruce trying to put knowledge of self in the Bible and whatnot, talking about there's some verses talking about that the Israelites are going to come to knowledge of self or something like that.
Now, do you understand to be more ethnically or spiritually, or a combination of the two? From what you heard.
I'm sorry, Alton, you on the back chat? Where's Alton? Where's honestly? Go ahead.
So Isaiah 29 says that the wisdom of their fathers will basically leave them and basically be put into a book and given to an unlearned person, etc. Right? And that at one point that wisdom, air quotes, will come back to them, and that when the Israelites get that wisdom, they will no longer err in their doctrine. Right? So I'm going to say it's going to be how they walk and talk and live this thing out thing versus finding out that they're the people and the people got to bow down and kiss their converts.
So more like a salvation kind of thing, more of a faith thing to repent. Not so much now you Israelite and you can just believe whatever you want to believe.
Yeah, it's a teshuvah.
Well, I'm not putting words in my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, brother.
For me, when if your Israelite awakening isn't about the concept of like on a national level, how to say this, like looking at the one whom was pierced, kind of having that come to Jesus moment, right? Like then you're missing the whole concept, right? Like if you're missing the whole the concept of like you're supposed to not err in your doctrine anymore, you're missing the whole concept. If you're missing the concept of like Psalm 67, to where like Israel's supposed to show the saving health of the Most High, the Yeshua of the Most High to the nations and whatnot before they can get any blessings. You're missing the whole point of this thing, fam. Like this is right. Like I hate to say this, and I'm literally biting my tongue. This I actually have to agree with Sister Cherry on this. Like most of the time, you don't hear Israelite I'm hearing people talk about this knowledge of self more than I'm hearing people talk about this come to Jesus moment, right? And I'm confused because now they got to explain this to me in the scrolls because we might not be reading the same book. You know what I'm saying? Like I need them to walk me through Isaiah right quick from front to back and tell me how this thing works for them, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That answer your question?
Yeah, brother. So I can keep the laws and have knowledge of self, but still miss the mark if I don't get the fullness of Isaiah, and particularly Isaiah 53, that servant. Man. I won't pour into your mouth. You can push up if you want to.
Hey, no, I'm going to focus on like Isaiah 53 is beautiful, right? Because he says, "By my knowledge, or by his knowledge, shall my righteous servant justify many." Right. So we're going back to this concept, like it simple. Like we all know the simple parables and stories, fam. Like if you listen to my words but not do as I say, you're like the person who built this house upon the sand, right? Not the rock, right? We know it. Yeah. Like it's so. Again, are you hearing the words of are you hearing messianic words coming out of their mouth? Are you hearing this Israel's black, right, coming out their mouth, right? Like, so that's not knowledge of self, fam. Like even in the Israelite concept, knowledge of self would be like that wisdom of your fathers that you're trying to live out again, trying not to err in their doctrine and whatnot, right? Trying to get right in a way that they didn't get right the first time, having it on the inside and not doing it in a superficial way on the outside, wearing the law on your arm and your head or whatnot, right? As a sign that you understand this thing, right? Like walk it, talk it, live it or whatnot in a way to where you're showing the saving health of the Most High, again, the Yeshua, the Most High to the nations, man. Like it's like what like okay, there's this concept of holding up an ensign to the nations and whatnot, right? During the time of the gathering.
More, hold on. I'm sorry, more. Hold on a second.
It.
I'm leaving. You got me. Honestly, you looked at your phone?
No, I ain't looking at my phone. I should be home in like 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. Like the scrolls talk about like holding up an ensign to the nations even during the time of this gathering and whatnot, right? And so like there's two out of the two instances we could hold up. What makes more sense? Yeshua or Israel was black. Like I'm not down with this whole like this new age like Nation of Israelites NOI concept. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't do it, fam. I can't. It doesn't make like it's repugnant to me when I look into the scrolls because you're definitely missing the whole point, fam. The awakening is not about Israel was black. No, you can't. You literally cannot show me that anywhere in the scrolls. There's not a verse that even hints to that. Hints to that.
People don't like that. But listen, I see that. I gotta agree with him. Y'all might be mad at the white Jew. The light-skinned Jews, Dr. Brown and them, they already said that they know that Jesus and them weren't European. Didn't they say that? Y'all don't want to accept that, but they already saying that. What do y'all want? The world to bow down to you folk in America? The white Jew to give you their money, give you their banks? What do y'all want? You can't say your rightful place at the table because you don't want them folk at the table. Fair use. Hold on a minute. I want y'all to, oh, but another thing now, I'm going to bring out another thing too. Damon Richardson probably may, but it's a very good chance that he won't even sit down with y'all if y'all don't have degrees in the field, just to prove you have the discipline and you put the work in. You know, a lot of times when people in scholarship, they don't just want to sit down with any Joe Schmo. You know, Polite, they didn't really care about Polite degree because the traction he had on the internet. He all up in the hot night. He all up in the radio station talking reckless about Christianity. And, they want to talk to Omar Johnson too. When people press Omar, he want to act like he ain't got no problem with the church. And these fools will let him into church and then he get to talking reckless. But for the most part, unless you're somebody like Polite that have established themselves on a whole nother level, y'all can say what y'all want. Folk ain't know why Polite was somebody, but Polite was somebody. He's sitting at the front of the games. He with all these stars and athletes. He on the radio station. He doing this, he doing that. Come to find out he ain't doing nothing. But he hyped the people up so much, and he do touch on spirituality and talk on it. They was like, we got to deal with this dude right here. Don't think these people don't be talking in the background. I ain't on the phone with them. I ain't in them texts. I ain't in them chats right now. But we used to all be in the group talking. Don't think these folk ain't talking. So the average person, they wouldn't want to really sit down with y'all like more. They wouldn't want to sit down with YAP gang because y'all ain't got traction as far as y'all numbers on YouTube and this, that. They may not see it beneficial. It might actually, to be honest, be a hindrance because if you're gonna use some of the sources and like what Mo just said about Dr. Bantu in the video with the matter of fact, I'll pull that video up with Vince Bantu and the other sister. I forget her name. She's scholar to her degrees in the field. That's all these people gonna have in the cipher, and he gonna use them to actually say some people came over here. That's gonna further the conversation. Well, how do you think it's possible to know who that came over? If some came over, how was it possible to know who came over could be part of the slave trade? You know, so people would rather make it sound like, ain't nobody come over. Don't shut the conversation down. This conversation ain't even worthy of having. But the church want to play around and folk are having it on social media. That's one of the effects of social media. Folk on talk. They want to shut TikTok down. Why do you think they want to shut it down? Because folk can shut the mall down. Folk can do what they want. Listen, we all meet. We're going to have a flash dance, whatever they call them things. 500 people meeting in the mall. We're going to wild out and shoot a video. Information get out. People can organize grassroots movements like the Hebrew Roots movement, like the Awakening. Don't say what you want. The Awakening is big, but y'all still ain't got that many buildings. Majority of y'all are still learning and growing and coming to the Awakening through YouTube. So it's still considered a grassroots movement. So they don't really, they may not think that they really have to respect it on that level. Y'all already paranoid about a 501, so y'all not gonna move it. That's what make Nathaniel different from y'all on another level. He gonna have uniform, he gonna have drones, he gonna have buildings, he gonna move on another level, and y'all still spooked out. You heard what the light-skinned sister said with the big glasses. I forget her name. That's Israel. She said, oh, he been compromised. Y'all become like organized religion, because anything that's organized, like Nathaniel being organized and want to be tax exempt, y'all think that's part of organized religion, and that's not what y'all want. So your mindset, y'all don't even want to have conferences y'all don't want to sit down and have councils. How can we unify as Israel and do A, B, C, and D? At least this is our doctrine. As Israelites that's in America, this is part of our y'all don't even want to do that. So it's good. Some people would say it's good that y'all still got a grassroots mindset, no matter how big it is. So some people may not want to even sit down because it's look like it's given legitimacy. If you get the woke church, if you get Lisa Fields and Damon Richardson and people that's representing, because this dude, the people, I got more followers than this dude. People are following me. Y'all crazy folk, other pastors and all type of oneness folk. I got all type of different Freemasons and correction officers I know from back, and I got all type of people, all type of background, all type of denominations that follow me. So it's all type of people. It's different. But the people that follow him and respect him, it's on another level. He represents Orthodox Christianity, the strong black church, not the ignorant Pentecostals rolling and prophesying that we need to bind them in the prayer line. Not that nonsense, not the zoo. He represents the real black church in America. So to bring on more and some of y'all that are Israelites, that's showing now the rest of the world and the pastors now they have become on our level. Just to even have dialogue. The mere fact that they would show up, be like, man, I don't know if that's a good look. Even if you had non-campers on like Kelly and them, and they came on with ties and all of that stuff. Now we don't know if that's a good look. They're not on our level to sit down and have dialogue with these people. And this is just how it is. Fair use. Let me let some of this play.
So every time we keep asking this question about where the real Jewish people today, like how many times do we need to answer the fact that they've been in Spain? That's what the Sephardic Jews are. They've been in Ethiopia. That's what Beta Israel is. They've been in the Middle East, outside of Judea. That's what Mizrahi Jews are. They were in Egypt. They were in Syria, Persia, you name it. And then the ones that went into Eastern Europe were called the Ashkenazi Jews. And then and there are other groups. There are a bunch of other groups as well. So I don't understand.
Look like Berean knocked himself out more.
Looks like it.
Hey,
you had a question?
Yeah, real quick. I don't know if you were listening.
He said that there are no black Jews. Like, how many times not heterogeneous? It's like we're not understanding that this is, that ethnically, this is a very diverse group of people. They're not just one little group of people. And again, nobody said that there are no black Jews. Like, how many times do I need to say that? The fact of the matter is that the black people that came from Ghana and Mali and Congo, Cameroon, Nigeria, West Africa were not Jewish. They were not Hebrew. They were not Israelites. They were West African. And all of their DNA points to ancestors that come from there, not from Israel. So it ain't that it can't be true, it's that it's not. West Africans are not Jewish, are not Hebrews, no matter who keeps saying it or how loud they say it.
That right there. Oh boy. That right there is the problem. That right there is the problem. Whoever was living in West Africa that came on them slave ships, almost everybody already know there were different tribes and groups of people. So when they come here, talking about we wasn't doing that in Africa, we have different tribes, and coming over here in America, who you would call African Americans, are a group of that have formed a culture, a group of different people from different African tribes. Everybody didn't have the same belief. That was all the millions of people. They came from all over West Africa. They were different tribes and groups of people. Y'all say they were all Israelites and they all kept the commandments because the Africans got them and put them in slavery. This is the part that got us stuck right here. Other people saying just believe Deuteronomy. We came on slave ships, Deuteronomy 28. The church don't accept Deuteronomy 28 as prophecy in the sense, like we said, we already said vassal treaty and this and that. But for him to say that nobody, this is the heart of it right here. This is the heart of it right here. My man say shots fired. This is the heart of it right here, that he would say nobody. West Africans are not connected to the Levant in any way, and there wasn't nobody over there. Converts are not nobody. This is a problem right here. So people, when y'all tell me how much information or proof is out there, now they don't really want to accept it or look at it because it's not coming from scholars in the field. The person that's trying to cheer you with you those videos speak Lashawan Kwadash, they never sat up in a classroom. They never articulated anywhere. You see why articulation is important? They would take Ron Dalton more seriously if he went to the university. And he had a degree. He went to historical black college and he had a degree in the field. He just looked like a crazy black power person, even though he's speaking facts. You don't have the discipline to sit in the classroom. Everybody that God got to wake up, got to be a dropout. Everybody that God wake up, he didn't send them to school to go learn. Nobody can say I've been in an awakening 20 years and I've obtained a degree in this because this is my culture, this is what I love, this is my people. You can't. Sometimes a lot of y'all people are smart. People laugh. I know a lot of them dudes on the block, they've been in jail. Y'all can say what y'all want. Y'all can say what y'all want. Guerrilla Hebrew moving a denomination like a lot of y'all bishops. He got more followers than a lot of y'all bishops organized all over the country. A lot of these dudes, even a lot of guys out in the street selling drugs and everything, these guys ain't dumb. They just don't have a degree to be on Wall Street. But trust me, they move in millions. It's not a game, but y'all don't respect certain things. But a lot of guys on the block, they have seen Wall Street money. A lot of these bosses out here. Y'all think it's a game? Free rate, that was Wall Street money. And he said the second or the third time he met the man was like his friend. He said he fronted him 100. Then they started giving thousands. I'm talking about keys. Multi-million. He said he's doing 2 million. These people doing money. This is Wall Street type of stuff, but they don't have an MBA. But they know how to move money. They see and understand. 50 Cent see and understand. How this thing's supposed to go. So there are people that can get money that don't have degrees, but most people not gonna recognize it. They want to know what work you have put in. Once in a while, a person will slip through and they'll sit at the table when it's somebody like the likes of Polite, because his buzz is so heavy on the internet. But to be honest, the average person's buzz is not that heavy. But when you locked in the house, when you on the internet, and you were Kanye West and you were Kyrie Irving, they looking at the stuff we looking. They got the same TikTok. They might be millionaires up in a mansion. They got the same TikTok. They got the same YouTube. They run across the same videos. So they start thinking and feeling some type of way. That's how come people have always, I told y'all the 33rd was always reserved for certain people. You'll automatically receive a 33rd degree in the Scottish Rite if you're the president of the United States of America. Why? Because the position you hold, you can get an honorary degree. Pike and Hall and all them other people that got the 33rd. It's the amount of work they put in the craft of Freemasonry. They put the work in. Everybody say running around here 33rd degree. Oh, they'll give it to somebody like, they'll give it to a popular pastor as an honorary degree. If the whole thing is honorary, unless, like I said, you put in work and you part of that 5%, they say, yo, gonna pull this guy up. He did too much. But if you're very popular, why is that? Because if a popular person, all y'all need for a basketball player, all y'all need, you know how much Kyrie and Kanye has helped the awakening? More than a lot of these guys, than the Benaiah Israel and Ron Dalton and all of them. The mere fact Kanye put the buzz out there like that. We Israel, we Judah. Now the other people are going to be like, wait a minute now. What is this? Now people would laugh and say, all y'all black folk need is a star. Once a star wear my shirt, my sneakers, whatever I said, once y'all see Beyonce got that star, Nicki Minaj, once they got it all, y'all want to do it. Once y'all see a star, automatic. Kanye said it, it's the truth. Like he a scholar in the, but Kanye said it. That's good enough for y'all. That's good enough for y'all. There you.
Oh, hello?
Scripture plainly tells us that the Israelites were scattered all over the earth. So what is the reason that some people claim that they all went to West Africa? Even if you might have found some that went to, even if you found some that went to West Africa, that doesn't mean an entire group of them migrated to West Africa. And it doesn't make the West Africans Jewish.
So he's arguing historical stuff that y'all been saying, that y'all got videos. How did they get from Spain to West Africa? That's what he's arguing. Y'all got videos with this stuff out here, but that's what he's arguing right here. Now, he just can't throw it because he's throwing stuff out there. The shadow boxing now. He just telling people that don't mean they all. So this is where to sit down. This is where the dialogue need to take place. I like what somebody else said. Somebody else said, would they talk in the background? Some people, maybe they'll talk in the background, but people will be like, all right, if we, leading apologists, we're going to sit down with Israelites, maybe not you non-campers, but the camp dudes, they're going to turn their cameras on. They're going to come in with secret button cameras and everybody trying, because, the camp's heavy in the footage. That's okay. Vocab and the footage is important, but camps are the first ones. They're heavy in the footage. I learned the title of my video, mess around with them camps. They'll put something just reckless up on there. This is what it is. Now, this is where we get to the questions that we've been asking. Do people really want dialogue? Do people really want to sit down and talk? Because people can easily say, yo, these dudes just trying to protect their numbers. The church got to try to protect their numbers and all of this stuff. Come on, y'all. I ain't going to be able to get to finish this.
Hey.
Hold on. You want to say something, brother? You stay unmuted.
Yeah, bro.
The other dude stayed on you. You stay unmuted. You want to say something?
Brother Berean?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. I feel like what the gentleman is saying is slightly disingenuous because it goes against all of the research that Tudor Parford did. It goes against research of Ogilvy back in the 17 or 1600s that he did. And then it also goes against this idea of what the Ashkenaz actually thought in 1830s, that the tribes of Israel were actually in West Africa.
Right.
All 10 tribes. That's what they believe. There's a letter. I put it in the chat. It's still out there. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there's all kinds of Israel right now. They're actually doing a documentary, Rudy Israel, a white Jewish man.
Yes.
And the chief rabbinate of Israel. They're actually going into Africa, validating the Igbo, revalidating the Limba, and all these other groups, and the Yoruba as well. And I mean, I talk to Rudy Israel all the time. I'm kind of irritated with this topic because I don't know if they know. Well, because I'm involved in some of this stuff. I don't know if they know the amount of interest that Israel having in Jew. I shouldn't even say in the front. These are the ignorant folk, finessing them to ignorant.
Israel got an interest in Jews all over the world. And they first were, for some reason, they won the first. Then now they brought Jews from Europe, all that stuff. Germany were being persecuted. But the second place that they really, really jumped to was Ethiopia. And they seem to have a great interest in Jews in Africa. For some reason. I'm gonna just
Well,
put
this
that
is
out
what
there
this
like that. And I don't know if the church people know the depths of the interest, how interested they are in it.
Yeah, that's the part that I find frustrating, is because I know people like the doctor that debated with Gorilla knows about this, and the fact that no one's bringing it up is frustrating. And like I said, the thing is I've heard from the mouth of Rudy Israel, who's actually an activist, and he said that 30% of the slave trade. Now I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but 30% of the slave trade consists of Igbo, and they have confirmed through the Abadiah Alliance that the Igbo are in fact descendants of Israel based off the migration pattern of their Y chromosome. Yes. And what this gentleman's saying on this video right here, he's saying all West Africa, and West Africa is the most genetically diverse place in the world. On top of that, when you look at these populations in Igbo or Igbo land, Yoruba land, Limba, we don't want to forget about the Limba. These populations are actually split. They don't all carry the same haplogroups in those populations. Some carry haplogroups that have migration patterns that follow the Sephardim and that follow different migration patterns.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm gonna step away, JT Mac. I'm stepping away for a couple minutes. I hear y'all though.
Okay. No, that's all I wanted to share. Is I just feel like
no. Oh, you gotta go.
No, I'm still here. I just wanted to share that because it was I
don't want to break your train of thought. I'm just telling y'all, if y'all don't hear me, I'm stepping away. But y'all, you keep going. You keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, that's all I want to share. Is I feel that there's obviously enough proof that the diaspora went into the four corners of the earth. The diaspora today that we know of today carry different phenotypes, and they're all still Israel. There is no all black Israel. There is no all white Israel. That doesn't even match up with scripture. When you look at Isaiah 11:11, and it says God will reach his hand out a second time to gather and to disperse of his people. And he names specific ancient kingdoms like Cush, but he also names other places too, right? So that's my whole frustration with these type of claims.
Do me a favor. I'm sorry. Do me a favor, more. Click your screen on. I see you had the other video up. Because I'm not gonna be able to do it from my my phone. I got to step away from the computer for a minute. You there, more? You walked away.
He may have walked away.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, y'all good. Just go ahead. Then I thought he wanted to bring up a.
No, I'm pulling it up right now. I'm pulling it up right now.
Hey, what's your brother? I don't know your name. M. Bailey. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yep.
Michael Bailey. Okay, Michael. What you're talking about is kind of in line with the first one question I wanted to ask more earlier. There was a gentleman on who.
I'm sorry. Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off for 1 second. Y'all heard what Michael said, right? Everybody, do y'all believe it's enough? Covey. I want to only the sensible Christians. I don't want Israelite. Don't say nothing. Israelite. Don't say nothing. Only the sensible Christians. Covey, LeChat. Do y'all believe?
I think somebody's
anybody
muted.
There?
Did Brandon, you know you're on mute, or you want me to play the video?
Oh, I'm sorry. I unmuted myself. Do y'all think it's enough information out there to at least look into these things? Because if enough information is out there, now you're looking crazy if you don't want to look at the information. Now you're looking downright crazy or wicked if you do. You all think it's enough information out there? I'm muting myself. I'm stepping away. Go ahead. I don't know who I cut on. Brown.
It was me.
Brown. JT Mac.
Yeah. No, I was gonna along the lines of what Michael was talking about. There was a gentleman on earlier who made the statement that West Africa was pretty much the northern kingdom of Israel, that they all migrated to Northwest Africa. And so he basically would, unless I misunderstood him, he was basically saying that everybody that was stolen from the west coast of Africa were basically from the northern tribe. So that goes to the whole slave ship thing. And I was going to ask more because he was quoting you guys, by the way. He was quoting the YAP gang a lot more. So I was going to ask you guys, do you guys agree with him that the majority of the West Coast was the Northern Kingdom of Israel? Because that's the first time
No,
I've heard someone quote you guys and then make that same claim at the same time.
no, and I'm glad you caught that because I missed that part. No, we don't make that claim. We don't make the claim that the majority of people were Israelites either. Like it's you will hear us consistently say some.
Right, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure because he quoted some things that you guys have said that I know, that I've heard you guys say before. So when he said that, I was kind of like, huh? So that maybe that's just something he believes, but I like some of the other things that are coming out by different tribes or different regions of Africa have had some ties to Israel. Mm-hmm. That's not hard to believe. I mean, we've known that Israelites have migrated all over, but like Michael just said, the Bible says they dispersed to the four corners of the earth. So that includes Africa, Europe. See, the problem is, and I'm going to land my plane, they okay with Israelites migrating to Africa and maybe Asia, but the Americas and South America and other places and islands, but they don't want to hear nothing about Europe. They don't want Israelites selling in Europe, and that seemed to be the biggest beef of all.
Well, here I don't want to throw. I mean, I'm going to throw an indirect shot at the One West, but like for instance, like if you even look at Isaiah 11:11. It actually says that in that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people from Assyria, Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, Cush, Elam, Babylonia, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the Mediterranean. So it's this idea that there was a first time. So a lot of times the One West, the theology is that God's going to redeem all of Israel all at once at the same time, and it's going to be when Yeshua comes back. But there's this idea in scripture that we're seeing, whether it's Isaiah 11:11 or there's other passages that we can look to. I think if you look in Isaiah 11:11, 12, it just basically presents this idea that there was some that already were reached out the first time, so he's going to reach his hand out a second time. So that's where I think this idea of I don't want to say the outcast, but the what's the good word for it? The banished Israel. I think one translation says he will uphold a signal to the nations and assemble the banished Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So it's this idea of grafting in, right? And I think that when you look at the nations that's mentioned, in another translation says Egypt, Pathros, Nubia, and Elam. So it includes these other parts that are not really popular, I guess. Ancient nations that weren't popularly known to be associated with Israel. So yeah, I don't think that Scripture follows this narrative that there's going to just be like this one gathering by God, by Yeshua himself once. There's this idea that there's going to be a regathering that's going to happen twice, because he wouldn't say in that day he will apply his hand again or a second time.
Well, correct. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, Orthodox Moor. Having Bruce made claim that only the tribe of Judah ended up in West Africa, and if that's what he's saying, how is that even possible?
Yeah, and Bruce would have to correct me on this, but I believe his doctrine is the concept of it being just Judah, and Judah going to the four corners of the earth, and Judah going to the four corners of the earth through the trans-Saharan slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade.
And that's as if the other tribes weren't punished, just Judah.
Yeah, but I real quick, I want to comment. I didn't get to comment on your first question about Israelites going to Europe or whatnot.
And wait a minute, this is Lisa Fields. Don't go too far without touching on this. Lisa Fields with Dr. Bantu or somebody was saying about West Africa?
Yes, sir. This is a whole panel conversation that they have with their scholars and whatnot. The same exact scholars that Damon Richardson was saying were in the Jude 3 project documentary and whatnot, right? And so this is actually some information that, like, so I actually was able to dialogue with Adam Coleman, who's in the documentary and whatnot. And he
you got it queued up, or just
yeah. Oh, no, and I got the timestamps and all that. Yeah, 100%.
All right, go. All right. Go ahead.
And so Adam,
you do the Europe after you speak on that Europe thing. I want to hear this.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm mute myself.
So I'll explain this part real quick. Then I'll hit the your part, and I'll have the video. So
everybody else keep their microphone muted when you're not talking. I'm muting myself.
Yeah, so I was able to speak to Adam Coleman on YouTube or whatnot via one of his community posts or whatnot, and Dr. Vince Bantu speaks on some sources here that they weren't able to get into the documentary, that they tried to get in the documentary, but they weren't able to get. Stuff gets on the cutting room floor or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of information got left out or whatnot, and so it came out here and whatnot. And this is information that even Damon Richardson is starting to circulate in terms of Christians being in West Africa, but a lot of people aren't familiar with what he says later on in this bit here. But in talking to JT Mack and touching his question in terms about Jews in Europe and whatnot. So this is why we follow, and yeah, we follow migration patterns, we follow material culture, we follow genetics, language, all that type of stuff, right? Cultural practices, all that type of stuff, right? Because the scrolls talk about, you know what I'm saying, Israelites being spread to the four corners of the world and whatnot, right? So we're looking for that fingerprint, for that footprint in the four corners of in the world and whatnot. And so, like in the debate with Dr. Brown and Alazar, Gorilla Hebrew and whatnot, Dr. Brown kept making the argument. No, we kept the material culture alive. We got the language, we got the culture, we got the laws, etc., etc., etc. And and check this out, even if you're talking about their converts, even if you claim that they're okay, fine. That means they're still part of the nation, fam. They're still upkeeping the thing and whatnot. You still got to say that no matter what, you got to say that they're national Israelites and whatnot, based upon the law and whatnot, right? And so on that concept, fam, you still can't cut them out, right? But on a genetic level, right? This is something I point to and why genetics is a very important piece to understand here, is because people try to demarcate people based upon genetics and don't recognize how it connects people at the same point in time, right? Like, so for instance, my grandfather, who descends from North African Jews that came through Spain and came to the Americas and whatnot, has the same haplogroup upstream that Dante Fortune has, right? They're both subclades of E1B1B, right? And you can also find the fact that Ashkenazi Jews carry this haplogroup by 10%. Sephardic Jews carry it by 10%. Libyan Jews carry it by 17%. Ethiopian Jews carry it. There's a bunch of different Jewish populations that carry this particular haplogroup, just like there's a bunch of different Jewish populations that carry a specific haplogroup of J and whatnot, right? It shows you the fact that there's a genetic connection and whatnot, but it also shows you that Israel was a mixed multitude, right? And this is something that YAP also points to, like, because when you're looking for Jewish populations, you should be looking for a fingerprint or an imprint of a mixed multitude and whatnot, right? And that's why at this juncture, we shouldn't be having no beef. We should be able to have conversations and dialogues and whatnot on the information and whatnot, because we're not making any supremacist claims and whatnot. We're talking about what the science shows, what the book's saying, what the material culture is saying, what the migration is saying. It's some folk that came across the slave trade that are going to have some connection to Hebrew culture and whatnot, right? Not all, right? And we can see that same same migration pattern bringing Christians to West Africa, right? But we can also see migrations going from similar sources going to Europe and whatnot. It just is what it is. Even if you want to claim the Sephardic concept, right? And this one boggles my mind, fam. Even if you want to claim this whole, like, well, Sephardic Jews or Negroes, about, all right, cool. Now you got to break down the large aspect of Sephardic Jews that when they left Spain, they went into Dutch colonies and German colonies, fam. Explain that one to me, because we know that one happened for a fact.
Well, there was also the children of Saint Domingue that were sent, and then there was other Sephardics that were sent to the coast.
Yeah, but the question's about Europe. Like, so Jews going to Africa is not a question. Like, we defend that all day. That's not an issue, right? But JT Mack was asking about demarcating Jews that go to Europe and whatnot. We can't do that, because we see the same linguistic ties, the same genetic ties, the same cultural ties, the same migratory sources, etc. We can't demarcate them. We have no reason to demarcate them. That's the whole point.
Oh, I agree 100%.
So with that, I'm gonna queue up this video. I'm gonna go to 41 minutes and 6 seconds. This is where Dr. Vince Bantu. Actually, I'm gonna go a little bit before that just so we get some context. They're explaining him and another brother explaining Christianity in West Africa. But this is from video from Jude 3 titled "Rediscovering Early African Christianity." Very, very important, because in their documentary they talk about the different Christian places in West Africa around the time of colonialism, etc. But in the documentary, they focus almost solely on Catholic places and whatnot. Here, they get into some sources that talk about like a non-Catholic. They talk about Christianity in West Africa prior to that, right? And so it's very, very interesting to listen to. So without further ado, I'm gonna get to that point and I'm gonna hit play.
An Afro-Portuguese Roman Catholic priest who converts to Protestantism.
Contractors are charging high prices for roof replacement these days. That's why it's important to find the best.
Converts to Protestantism by the late 1550s, ends up in Württemberg. I can't pronounce it right. Yeah. W-U-R-R-E-N. But he ends up there. But then you have the first group by 1590s in London who convert to Protestantism there during the time that's there. And you have Protestants who are there. So by 1600, you already have people of African descent on the Orthodox side, the Catholic side, and the Protestant side.
Dr. Bantu, and then we'll go to our last question and open it up.
Yeah, for sure. I would say just echoing a lot of what was said. And I got to give a shout out. Where's Pastor Mace? Where you at, brother? It's dark. Where you at, my man? I got to give a shout out to Pastor Mace because Pastor Mace asked me to address this question at Frequency a few years ago, and I gave a workshop where I was just like, well, all I know of is basically I presented not as well, but I presented the information that Dr. Dan was just talking about, the history of the Congo, powerful history of an African nation that freely adopted Christianity under King Nzinga Mbemba in the 1500s and was a Christian nation for 300 years. And Doña Beatriz Kempavita is a powerful prophetess in Congo, whose name we need to know, who started a powerful movement where she was trying to kick out, Portuguese and Belgian colonization in the Congo. And as Dr. Daniel said, some of us were already Christians when we got here. And one of the biggest slave revolts in U.S. history, the Stono Rebellion in 1739 in South Carolina, was started by Congolese Christians who spoke French and were already Christians when they got here. So the gospel of Jesus Christ gave African slaves in the Americas the sense of freedom to fight for their freedom. They rallied a bunch of other African Americans and were making their way to Florida. And so it's a powerful history. One thing but one thing I was wondering about, that was all I knew at the time. And I was curious though about, because the sad reality is still that even though it was independently accepted, it still came from Europeans. And as Dr. Daniels mentioned, there was a sense in which they had to try to emulate. Even Doña Beatriz called herself like the reincarnation of St. Anthony of Padua. And so there was a highly Europeanist. Now, it was contextualized too. There was a lot of, if you look at the crucifixes and different things that came from there, it was a mix of Congolese and European Christianity. But, somebody could say that still came from Europe though. It didn't come from West Africa. So maybe wonder, okay, you had all this Christianity in North Africa and in East Africa, North Africa, Egypt, Nubia, Ethiopia. Did any of that make its way into West and Central Africa? As I mentioned earlier, it was largely because of the oppression of European Christianity that it didn't. And so we never have to, forget that. But did it make it? And I was so shocked to find out that it indeed did. And that there is actually Muslim historical records that show that Christianity also didn't only come in from West Africa through Europeans, but it also came because also those Congolese were also trading slaves with the Portuguese as well in the slave castles. So that Congolese Christian kingdom was participating in the transatlantic slave trade. But there were indigenous African Christians who had the historic. I mean, I think Negro spirituals and gospels liturgical too. But I get what you mean. But there were East Africans that had that Orthodox original African Christianity, the soulful, I mean, you talk about soul, you get the Debteras, that's some soulful liturgical African music right there, or Saint Yared. But that Christianity did make its way into West and Central Africa already just through migration, because we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, but we also have to talk about the trans-Saharan slave trade and the trans-Saharan also trade of spices and salt. And also, so through that, from Nubia, mainly Nubia, Christianity, there is historical records from historians like Ibn Khaldun, al-Makrizi, and I'm working on an article on this right now to put it all together. And God is so good, because you know, it was at the same time that Pastor Mays asked me this question that I was actually in the process of learning classical Arabic, and I just finished learning it. So now I can slowly read these texts and like translate them and stuff. And I found this, the best one. I had to put it on Facebook, but the article ain't out yet, but I had to put this one on Facebook because I just wanted everybody to know there is a historian from the early 1300s from Egypt. His name is Ibn al-Dawadari, and he talked to Mansa Musa in the 1300s, who was the king of Mali, which is not the modern nation of Mali, but it was basically all of West Africa. And he actually traveled, he was a Muslim, he traveled over to Mecca to make his pilgrimage, and he stopped in Egypt, and he talked to this historian, Ibn al-Dawadari, who wrote down in his history that Mansa Musa said that there was an entire Christian section of his kingdom. Now, this is 1300, so this is over a century and a half before the kingdom of the Congo became Christian and before any Europeans ever came to the West African coast, that Mansa Musa said there were Christians in his kingdom. And not only that, but he was the richest person in the world because he controlled gold trade. And not only that, but the Christian region of Mali, which would have been, you know, Ghana, Senegal, you know, parts of Nigeria, that the Christian section is actually the one that controlled the most of the gold trade. And in fact, he even said that when the Muslims tried to overtake that section to control the gold trade, the gold stopped growing. It stopped producing. And so they left them alone and allowed the Christians to control the gold-rich areas of the Mali Kingdom, which is West Africa. So I didn't know that when you asked me. So, you know, but just, yeah, praise God to know the answer is yes, it most certainly did. But not only, because I have to just echo so much what Pastor Allen just said, we have to stop defining ourselves by how much we measure up to or by white standards, and we have to look at historical records and African history on our own accord, right? One of the things that bothers me a little bit about when we as Black people recover African history is we only do it to the degree to which it influenced Western or white Christianity. That we will say, well, how did African Christianity influence Western Christianity? And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's talk about that, but I don't really, African history is not only valuable in as far as it was influential or it made its way into Western or white history. African history and African civilizations are valuable in and of themselves and in their own right. So it was really powerful to me to learn of the fact that Christianity made its way into West Africa and it came from other Africans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna fast forward to another portion where he breaks down. Oh, I gotta get past this real quick. Where he breaks down connections to Hebrews in West Africa as well, right? And what's interesting is those same sources that he's talking about, those same Islamic sources, they talk about Christians in the Kingdom of Ghana, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a lot to look at in those sources. That's why I would love to sit down with Damon Richardson actually and have a dialogue based upon those sources, because it shows a very interesting picture. With that, I'm gonna jump to the latter part of this conversation here. Hold on, let me unmute this. And shout out to Dr. Vince Bantu for keeping it a buck.
All right.
That's it.
Here we go. We're pressed for time. What?
No. I agree.
What's the distinct difference between Black Hebrew Israelites and Christians discovering that there are Black people in the Bible? What's the difference between those two?
I mean, we know there's a variety of Hebrew Israelism, and there's even some that I would call brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I think, you know, there's an academic disagreement and then there's a theological disagreement. The academic or the historical disagreement is that, are we Hebrews? Are we actually descendants of the biblical Hebrews? I would say, yeah, probably there's a degree, but as people of the diaspora, we have a lot of ethnicities and a lot of different ancestries that the Middle Passage and the Auction Block created. And so do some of us have yes, because in that research I was just talking about, I've also found some evidence for Hebrews in West and Central Africa, even before colonialism. So do some of us have some degree of Hebrew ancestry? Yeah, probably. I would say it's extremely negligible. negligible. It's very minimal. Some of us, there's some Christians that made it over. We talked about there's a lot of Muslims. I would say even more actually Muslims made it over through the Middle Passage. But most of us, most of our ancestors, the overwhelming majority of them were practitioners of traditional African religion. They were praying to the Orishas and they were practicing traditional African religion. And so, but even aside from that, if somebody wanted to say, no, I'm a Hebrew, that's my complete ancestor. I'm like, all right, well, I disagree with you. But if they're saying, I believe Jesus lived, rose, died again, and rose again, and that he's the only way, truth, and the life, and I just happen to believe that we are Hebrews, but I believe that salvation is open to everyone, then I'm like, okay, we're brothers and sisters in Christ. I disagree with you that we're as Hebrew as you think, but I disagree with that. But then you got Hebrew Israelites that are going further and saying, we're Hebrews and only Hebrews, i.e. black people, and then some variations of Native Americans and Hispanic people, only they can be saved and white people are excluded, and that the blood only covers people who are Hebrew. That's when I say, well, now you're changing and perverting the gospel, and so we're no longer brothers and sisters of Christ.
Yeah. And I would also add, and I'm
Yeah, those are the relevant portions of the video there. But based upon like what Dr. Vince Bantu was saying, I think that's where we can sit down and have a conversation, because there you're only used to hearing people talk about only Hebrews can be saved and we're all Hebrews, and other people talking about like we're all Hebrews, but we have a similar theology with it, right? And so YAP and other people affiliated with YAP, and please understand, some of our affiliates with that do have degrees in theology, etc. with that, right? But we sit down and say some of us, right? We look at the portions of West Africa where these sources are talking about that there are populations and whatnot. We can be like, okay, some of us have connections to this culture, whatnot, and we can also point to people having connection. Like, so we can also sit down and defend. We can go into the conscious community and defend. No. People aren't coons because they practice Christianity. We can also find Christianity in West Africa, etc. Right? So based upon that, like holding up the Yeshua is the banner, is the incident, whatnot. I feel like we can have a good sit down and dialogue and really break out the sources and talk about history. But based upon the fact that even the Christian scholars are starting to say the same thing, right? That no, I'm not. I can't confirm all, but I can definitely see where there's some, and they're saying negligible. We can talk about the numbers, right? We don't think it's going to be a large amount. Again, none of us are going to say the majority in YAP Gang or our affiliates. Is anyone there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bro.
I think Berean is busy at the moment.
No, I want you. Do me a favor. That last part, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Pull that Vince Bantu back up. Bantu back up for a minute and play that right there. And I want to talk about that last part in the statement that you made, because y'all not saying what the whole awakening is saying. The awakening is saying a large part of people that came over here. That's what y'all get. I don't want to misrepresent. Oh, you're a Christian. They always misrepresenting. A large part. Do you believe that that's what the awakening is saying? A large part. Some of them are saying everybody that came over here were Israelites. Just when Bantu, where the question, go to where the question was asked.
Yep.
And Bantu's reply.
You got it. Fair use.
All right.
That's it.
Here we go. We're pressed for time. What?
No. I agree.
What's the distinct difference between Black Hebrew Israelites and Christians discovering that there are Black people in the Bible? What's the difference between those two?
I mean, we know there's a variety of Hebrew Israelism, and there's even some that I would call brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I think, there's an academic disagreement and then there's a theological disagreement. The academic or the historical disagreement is that, are we Hebrews? Are we actually descendants of the biblical Hebrews? I would say, yeah, probably there's a degree, but as people of the diaspora, we have a lot of ethnicities and a lot of different ancestries that the Middle Passage and the auction block created. And so do some of us have the, yes, because in that research I was just talking about, I've also found some evidence for Hebrews in West and Central Africa, even before colonialism. So do some of us have some degree of Hebrew ancestry? Yeah, probably. I would say it's extremely negligible. It's very minimal. Some of us, there's some Christians that made it over, we talked about. There's a lot of Muslims, I would say even more actually Muslims made it over through the Middle Passage. But most of us, most of our ancestors, the overwhelming majority of them were practitioners of traditional African religion.
All right, stop right there for a second.
And they were practicing traditional African religion. And so,
all right, y'all heard what he said, right? They believe the numbers are big. That's okay. People are saying prophecy says that this is who we were. Scholarship, modern day scholarship says most of us was practicing regular tradition African religions. Y'all are saying there's a heavy Israelite presence of the religion, keeping Sabbath, not eating no pork, the laws of Moses, in most of West Africa where all of us come from. And a lot of those people that came over here, they were unified in their beliefs. They all knew they were Israel, but they were from different tribes. Is that what y'all, not y'all up here, is that what y'all saying, or the Christians are twisting? This is what I'm saying. Christians are twisting your words up. Dr. Bantu go on to say, he said, you could even say, I believe I'm Israel, but if your doctrine is right, you're my brothers and sisters in Christ. That's all Berean been saying. Oh, he ecumenical. That's the other fake ones. That's those other old ignorant folk thinking they learned and they not learned, because they not on the panel with him. I done been on the panel with these folk before. They not on the panel, but they say nobody could claim Israel and be saved. Not one of you that's black. But Dr. Brown could claim Israel and be saved and not eat pork and don't have a Christmas tree. But yo behind y'all can't do it. All I'm saying is let's come to the table, talk, and let's distinguish, because somebody in Israel is saved, because Paul and them were saved. But y'all making it hard for me because y'all got so many heretical friends that y'all come with, and y'all don't speak against them. Oh, your heretical friends don't need to believe in a virgin birth. They can believe Jesus was an angel. You can believe anything and be in Israel and be these folk friends. This is where the problem comes in. Where do you stand, fervent charity, and say, no, that's not my brother and my sister. No, that's my brother according to the flesh. That's not my brother in Christ. This is the problem. And y'all just moving. Y'all not going to move with Bantu and me and different people as believers. I thought I just brought your shoe in. And so y'all not going to move with just us. Y'all not gonna do that. Y'all gonna move with Israel no matter what. Damnable Old Testament Torah only. Y'all moving with them and y'all rolling with them. So if y'all rolling with them, this is just what it is. Doctrine is more important to us. This is what we receive from original Israelites. That's Peter and John and them. The synagogue of Satan was the wicked folk. Them other Israelites that was the same color that wanted to murder them and told them don't preach and teach in that name. This was Israelite on Israelite crime before the Romans jumped in. All right, that's the point I wanted to bring out. And so he's saying that their sources, excellent point on Orthodox Moor, the mere fact that he's saying that their sources, no matter what, Damon Richardson make it sound like it's near nothing. It ain't nothing. That's excellent that you bring out one of his contemporaries, one of his friends, one of his scholars, somebody he respects, because it's a respect in this thing. The problem is the church, a lot of these folk don't even respect y'all. They don't care about y'all. Not your soul, and they don't care about y'all. Y'all just a whole cult, just running a whole muck, and y'all think y'all saved and y'all listen to y'all prophets. I like you people. But they say you ain't supposed to deal with heretics like that. You want them once, you want to talk to them, you don't talk to them no more. I have them shooting down the other girl. Can't tear her down. She's sick for the. That's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that later on. Come on.
Hey,
Hold on a minute. I want the Hebrew Israel. I stepped away for a second. I don't know how long he was. If y'all don't mind, I let the Hebrew Israel talk.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Can I get a recap of what y'all been talking about? Because I saw Damon Richardson on the screen, and then I saw Dr. Bantu. So can someone give me a rundown of what?
Just a quick rundown, Ibri. We were up here breaking down the differences between different Israelite camps and whatnot, and groups that believe different things and whatnot. And we were talking about the differences in YAP gang and how the Christian apologists should sit down with us and have a dialogue. We don't need a debate, but we can dialogue, because the sources are starting to say, and even their scholars are starting to say, very similar things to us in the sense to where we don't make the claim that everybody that came over in the slave trade was an Israelite. We make the claim that some were, right? And so Dr. Vince Bantu, I was showing some a clip of him when he was on the Jude 3 channel, where he was breaking down Jude 3 project channel, where he was breaking down on a panel discussion something some information he had to leave out of a documentary, to where he was talking about in some modern in his modern research that he was able to find some sources breaking down that there was Christians in pre-colonial West Africa. But then going further down into the conversation, he said those same sources were also breaking down that there was Hebrews in pre-colonial West Africa. And so he was saying that he believes that there's some people that came across the slave trade that had some ties to Hebrews, but it was a negligible amount for what he was talking about. He was saying that there's some Christians that came over, some Muslims that came over, but he was also saying like the majority of people that came over were practicing African spiritual traditions and whatnot, right? And so I was just breaking down the fact that and to Berean's point, so I expect Damon Richardson to say what he was saying. It was a long held stance in the apologetics community for a long time that there was no Jews in West Africa, and that there was no Jews that came across in the slave trade and whatnot, right? Your man Vince Bantu is saying he just started coming across this research because he was jumping into the Islamic sources and whatnot, right? And so now he's starting to find these ties and whatnot. But again, I would agree with him. It's like you're not going to point to a majority. You're going to be able to find some. And so I think we can have a really good scholastic conversation based upon that concept.
And Avery, I was about to say, Avery, that I think Damon is contradicting himself when he says there is no evidence that any Jews were in West Africa. But then he turns around and says, well, yeah, that's possible that some Jews came across, some black Jews, came across on those ships. It sounds like a contradiction to me. That would mean that if some were on that ship, which I believe, then that means some of them ended up in West Africa. That's the only logical conclusion you can come to. So I don't know if his wanting to put down Hebrew Israelism or Black Hebrew Israelism theology so bad that he doesn't realize that he's contradicting himself.
Yeah, that actually is a contradiction when you think about it. Yep. They're either on the ship or they're not on the ship. You can't have
who contradicting with who? Actually, I walked away again, y'all. I'm sorry.
I was talking about Damon Richardson, Berean, when he's saying that. Yeah. He's contradicting himself when he'll say that, that he believes that some of them may, on the ship, or some of them may have been, Jew or Hebrew, but then he'll turn around and say there were none in West Africa. Well, you can't have both ways. It's a contradiction.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Go ahead. All right. Hebrew. All right. Y'all got it. The Hebrew Israel. You up? Or y'all was still explaining it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Y'all still breaking it down for him.
Yeah, Moore had explained to me what y'all were talking about, and it sounds like a very interesting topic. I like these type of topics, and I'm open to talking to people like Dr. Brown, or talking to people like Dr. Bantu. Actually, Moore would probably do better with Dr. Bantu, but yeah, I'm down to talking to basically Christian historians about these types of things. That'll be awesome. Yeah.
That's why I kind of feel like with the whole thing with Dr. Brown, it was slightly disingenuous with his debate, because I feel like he could, I think it's known in the apologetic or in that community that there's individuals like yourself that kind of understand this history and understand the genetics. And to me, it would have been better for a conversation with someone of that caliber versus someone that's kind of like a smoke screen. Like let's pull the banner up of this is what Black Jews are. Like that's kind of what I felt like that whole thing was like it.
But in fairness, my friend, Guerrilla Hebrew was the only one that stepped up. I'm not saying, as far as debating Dr. Brown.
That's right. Come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think Guerrilla Hebrew did pretty well. I mean, for in comparison, right? I mean, he's debated a PhD. I think he I think he did okay. Like, I don't think he won, but I think he did okay.
That's right. I agree. The same thing for somebody that don't have a degree against a PhD. People could laugh. At least he stepped up. He just got up there and he stepped up and he tried to shift. Let me ask you a question. Hebrew Israel, you believe in the 400-year prophecy?
No, I don't believe in that. To me, it happened in during the time period of the Exodus and conquest of Canaan time frame.
That's what Stephen, yes, and that was Stephen preaching Acts 7. So you believe more in line like the rest of the Christians believe. So if you don't believe in the 400-year prophecy, how do you see Israelites coming over here? Just got swept up in how do you see it?
That's an excellent question. So looking at a lot of populations in the Sahel in Africa, you would see that a lot of them have Levantine DNA and North African DNA and East African DNA. And it would seem like a lot of Jewish populations were also in that Sahelian region because, back in the day, in the medieval period, you had a lot of, you had Jewish people there because we see people like Askia Muhammad talk about, oh, you can't sell to a Jew. And if you sell to a Jew, I think you can go to prison or something like that.
And real quick, not to cut you, Ibri, but just to give people an idea of what the Sahel looks like. So we're talking about like Senegal, the Senegambia. We're talking about Mali, Mauritania, even northern Nigeria, etc. Going through Central Africa, whatnot, even to the eastern part of eastern part of Africa, coming up the outside of whatnot. And so that's the same part. That's important to know because that's the same part of Africa that Damon Richardson was saying that a large part of us came from, and that Jews weren't there, right? And so this is a very important part to understand. Go ahead, Ibri, my fault.
Wait, he said there weren't Jews in the Sahel?
He literally name dropped Mali. I was like, oh, bro. But but here's what I'm saying, bro. Like, I'm not mad at him because so like my Ann Bailey was talking about like that people should have reached out to us first to go talk to Dr. Brown. And I'm going to defend Dr. Brown real quick. Like, Dr. Brown's not going to reach out to us until someone like a vocab tells him, hey, you should go talk to these people right now, right? And to his defense, vocab is just now starting to say our names or whatnot, right? Just like Vince Bantu was saying, he's just now doing this research where he's finding evidence for Jews in West Africa. This isn't something that's widely known in the community because a lot of people don't look into the Islamic sources or whatnot. I can tell you from personal experience, I spent over a year trying to introduce the moderates to these Islamic sources, and they rejected them out of hand. They didn't want nothing to do with them, fam.
Yeah, I have to second that. But so going back to your question, so like actually maybe a map could be brought up. Do you think you can do that more? A map of the Sahel and a map of like West African city states and kingdoms and stuff, but so that people can have a visual aid. But so to answer your question, how some of us could descend from Israelites. So in the Sahel, you did have populations of Jewish people or Hebrew people, Israelite people, whatever, in that region, because we have evidence such as Askia Muhammad, who had made a decree stating that it's illegal to sell to Jewish people, and there had to have been a sizable portion of Jewish people for him to make such a decree, for that. And there's other references by Arab historians and travelers of Jews being in the Sahel region, and also trade routes. There was trade routes from the Sahel to. Oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry. Now, those Jews are what we would call black people like me.
I would say they would range in various skin tones in the Sahel. Like, they would be brown, they would be black, they would be like Mediterranean, just different variety of like phenotypes, if you ask me. But so yeah, so let's see. So dealing with
yeah, Brandon, if you could, I'm sharing my screen. I got a picture of a Sahel map.
Let's see what you got here. Yeah, so that's the Sahel. So Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Sudan. And what's interesting about the Sahel is that, and you can probably change your screen here in a second more, is that there was a lot of trade routes from the Sahel in North Africa and East Africa. And we all know that there has been a long-standing history of Jewish communities in North Africa and East Africa as well, but I'm going to kind of stick with North Africa at the moment. Because as far back as the time of like Carthage in 600 BC, you would have had Phoenician and possibly even Israelite peoples in North Africa for a very long time. And you have evidence of people from the Sahel having Levantine DNA, Bronze Age Levantine DNA. And the Levant, by the way, is Syrio-Palestine. And so easily you can say that having this Levantine DNA, you know, you easily can have Israelite ancestry. And some African Americans actually descend from Sahelian populations, and some African Americans have shown evidence of having Levant ancestry. So,
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I hear a lot of people say that the Levantine DNA. I have a problem with that because it doesn't connect you. There's no Israelite DNA. So saying Levantine, you could be a Persian, you could be an Arab, you could be a Canaanite, you can be whatever, And then when you talk about the DNA that came into Africa recently, you have the Arab invasions that bring the Levantine DNA into Arab, like when the Turks invade Egypt, or when the Turks actually invade southern Ethiopia. That's how you form a lot of what you call the mixed Ethiopians that call themselves Habesha and stuff like that, and start a caste system. So when people say these Africans have Levantine DNA, did it come from the recent invasions? Or is it ancient? And even if it is ancient, there is no DNA that says Israelite whatsoever. So you could be according to the Bible, you could be an Ishmaelite. You could be an Edomite. There is no Israelite DNA.
But I think there's actually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the E, there was a subclade of E and a subclades of J that they found in the Israel Natufian remains. Right.
Yeah,
and I think
the Tufians are not Israelites.
Yeah, they're before, but still, it's kind of like the closest thing we have. And from what I understand, go ahead. That's it.
When you talking about Natufians and you talking about haplogroup E, now, I've been dealing with these Israelites. You cannot use haplogroup E for any type of Israelite thing. First of all, scientifically, it goes back almost 50 to 75,000 years. So I don't know how they use haplogroup E when Abraham himself only goes back to about 1900 to 1700 BC. And so you have a lot of people like Joshua and them and all them dudes that be trying to use E as some type of Israelite DNA. Well, you can't go with it on one hand and then dismiss it on the other hand, because if you believe in DNA, then the DNA goes back even further than Adam himself. So you can't use haplogroup E as any type of Israelite DNA.
Yeah. So let me just address the beginning portion of what you said. All right. So good question when it came to the earlier part. How do we know, the people in the Sahel, if they have Arab DNA or ancient Levantine DNA? So first, to answer that portion of the question, Levantine DNA and Arab DNA is very distinct. Like, for instance, Levantine populations like the Druze or like the Lebanese, they are genetically, Arabs and Lebanese, both Middle Eastern, but genetically speaking, you can see distinctions. There are certain distinct things about Levantine populations and, let's say, like a Yemeni population, like a Lebanese population, a Yemeni population. They can have similarities, but like I said, there's still going to be some distinctions in the DNA.
Like what?
Like, for instance, if a Lebanese person were to take 23andMe, they're going to get Lebanon and the Levant. But if a Yemeni were to take 23andMe, they're going to get Yemen. because there
Really?
are distinctions within the genomes of these Middle Eastern
Now, I'm
populations.
studying DNA
But
for
let me
about
finish. Let me
myself.
finish answering your other questions, because I know you want to stop me at each point, but I want to kind of answer everything that you said. So when it comes to a lot of these Sahelian populations, a lot of the DNA or specific people groups of the Sahel get their DNA from the Levant, and not just like not like Middle Ages Levant, like they're coming out with DNA from the time period of the Bronze Age Levant. We're seeing people with basically ancient Canaanite DNA. Now, that's another thing that you said. How do you know that it's not Canaanite DNA? We don't have DNA from Israelites, so it could be Canaanite. I think it's absolutely fine for it to be Canaanite DNA. As a matter of fact, I would say if you have Canaanite DNA, that can help prove of your Israelite ancestry, because we know, according to the scriptures in the book of Judges, chapter 3, the Israelites intermixed with Canaanites. Even in Jesus' own genealogy, he has Canaanite ancestry. So having some Canaanite ancestry could indicate that your ancestors did interact with peoples of the Bronze Age and Iron Age Levant, just like the Israelites were with the Canaanites in the Bronze Age and Iron Age Levant. And hey, you could go back to these Israelite peoples. And then after that, what you do is look into the customs and cultures, the oral traditions, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Kobe, you say I have Canaanite DNA. What that got to do with? Didn't you trace your history back to some Sephardic
Hey, and that
Jews?
explains it right there.
Hebrew of Israel. What would you say about his second part with Abraham and the timeline at 50,000, 100,000 years? If you are young, well, if you just go with the timeline of Jacob, Abraham, and the rest.
Oh yeah, excellent question. I almost forgot about that. But I'll just Kobe's question really quick, and I think it's yours. And Kobe, you having Canaanite DNA helps prove basically your Israelite ancestry, your ancient Levantine ancestry, because like I said, the Israelites mixed with Canaanites, and you are a Sephardic Jew, and you have Canaanite DNA. You definitely have ancestry from the ancient Levant. You could definitely make the claim. So now addressing Abraham, I don't know if anybody up here is a older believer or a young earth believer, so I'm just going to kind of speak in a relative terms here. So the reason why YAP gang would say haplogroup E is the best candidate for the ancient Israelites is because haplogroup E is basically the founder of Afro-Asiatic populations. And if you don't know, Afro-Asiatic populations includes Semitic people. The Proto-Semitic people likely would have had their genesis either in like northeastern Africa or the Levant. And because of that, most of the papers that I've read have said and stated that Proto-Semites would have carried haplogroup E. And as we know, Abraham was Semitic. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all of Abraham's ancestors were Semitic people. They're Afro-Asiatic Semitic population. So we will deduce that Abraham also likely would have had haplogroup E if he's descending from these Proto-Semitic people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when you look at Jewish populations, they carry haplogroup E. As an example, 20% of Ashkenazi Jews carry haplogroup E. 30% of Sephardic Jews carry haplogroup E. You combine that 30% and that 20%, that's 50% of European Jewry with haplogroup E.
Quick disclaimer. Quick disclaimer. So YAP gang does not make the claim that all of haplogroup E is Israelite. What we're saying is that haplogroup E would have been a part of the Proto-Semitic population and whatnot, right? And that Hebrews would be a subset of that, right? Not the entirety, but a subset.
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Can I
which clades though?
Real quick though, I just want to, and I know I know y'all hate contention and opposition, but I gotta push back because first of all, he said Canaanite DNA. And then you use the word Afro-Asiatic peoples and saying that they would have been. No, that's not how it goes. When you talk about the Natufians and these people that went out, first of all, they had to migrate out of Africa almost 75,000 years ago. So this is way before Abraham. And Abraham wouldn't have been Semitic, by the way. Abraham is coming out of Chaldea. So when you say Afro-Asiatic, you're talking about a language group, not a bloodline. So when the Kushite people migrate out of Africa, that's when the mutations take place. They're still the same people. These would be Cushitic people, just like the people in Canaan that they call Canaanites. These would have originally been Cushite people, according to science and history. Now, just like if you look up a DNA map, you'll see that E marker that went out into the Levant and in some places in Europe. Then there's a back migration that brings the E marker back into Africa. But those are not different people. And these couldn't have been nobody linked to Abraham. And hold on. Okay, I'm sorry.
I said when they came back. You said that they came back.
I don't know the exact day. I think it was thousands and thousands of years ago. It was like before, it was way before Abraham. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
even when they came back, it was still before Abraham.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So what these dudes do is superimpose Bible, you know, I mean, I'm not going to get into whether the Bible history is true or not, but they're superimposing Bible history over real history and genetics.
Yes.
Okay. And you can't do it. You can't do it. And one more thing I want to add is that even the Jews in West Africa, you know, it would to say that they were you know, black or whatever is really a push. You know what I'm saying? Because the Jews in West Africa, we know they follow all the things that the black Israelites say they didn't follow. They had the Talmud. These are Talmudic Jews.
Come on.
And remember, you have what was called Luso-Africans. And so how is it? And remember, the Jews are brokering deals. They actually own a lot of the boats. So if you're a Jew coming out of West Africa, how are you getting on a Jewish boat coming to America? It ain't even gonna work. That's why when you look throughout the Americas, you don't see no remnants of no Jewish traditions. You see voodoo, kutamble, you see African traditional religions. There's nobody that got off a boat and said, Allahu Akbar. Well, some of them said Allahu Akbar, but ain't none of them. You don't see no Jewish customs. You can't show me that anywhere throughout the Americas. So they're superimposing their belief on history.
No, I agree with that. That's why I was telling you earlier from what Dr. Bantu say, all modern scholarship say right now, we was following traditional African religions. Don't let them YouTube Israelites tell you. And look at what my man's saying right here. Just saying where are the Jewish settlements? Even a very small in the South slave states in America. Why isn't there any evidence of burial tradition, architecture, 15, 16, all of that stuff? He's asking people. I don't know, y'all.
So and another thing I want to add one more quick thing is when they try to point out, and here's what Christians might need to know too. Just like you had a book called The Hebrewisms of West Africa. And because people think that the world began with the Jews and Jews are God, those traditions in the Torah exist in African traditions way before there was a Torah in existence. That's why.
Hey, yo, you got to get out of here, brother. You from Sinaitic, Garfield, and them. You ain't finna stay in here to bothering my people.
I don't deal with them like that.
But that's the truth, though. They don't want that truth.
So the Torah does not. They don't get. They reverse it. So you got to understand, because there was racism and everyone looked as Africans as not being the founders of nothing. When a lot of these Arabs and Christians and Muslims and Jews went into Africa and they seen them practices, they automatically assume that they got it from the Christians, Jews, or Muslims.
But it was the other way around.
It was the other way around, like the practice of circumcision, the moon Sabbaths, and that stuff existed with the Maasai people and Dogon.
We appreciate you. Gotta go, brother. You gotta go, brother.
Okay.
we gotta get him up out of here.
He left old friends. Don't kick him out.
So that statement from
These good Israelites don't want to know somebody was already practicing circumcision.
I would like to
Somebody
address.
already knew the high God before they came here. Y'all don't want to know that. Y'all can accept that. Y'all ain't ready for that. We take it slow with y'all on this channel. Y'all think all the revelation came from the Israelites, but it didn't. Come on, Dunamis. I don't know how much time you got.
that statement just saved said. So the thing is that's where Tudor Parford addresses a lot of that. Tudor Parford and Ogilvy address a lot of that. They did have evidence of settlements in Africa, and they actually had, had geography. Huh?
He mean here in the Americas, I think he said, right?
Oh, in the slave states. Okay, I missed that part. Okay, my bad.
Since you addressed me, I like to make a quick comeback, and then Moore can jump in as well if he wants. But what I just said earlier prior to him, I don't think I mentioned the Natufians. You added on some things that I never mentioned, but I don't think I mentioned the Natufians.
That was me.
But okay, but yeah. So dealing with a few things, Abraham, Chaldeans. One, they're Semitic people, anyways. So you said Abraham wasn't Semitic. Chaldeans are Semitic.
Sumerian is a Semitic tongue?
Chaldeans are not Sumerians. Chaldeans actually didn't even exist around the time of Abraham. Chaldeans aren't from the Bronze. Chaldeans aren't from the Middle Bronze Age when Abraham would have existed. Chaldeans are a later ethnic group. They're actually an Aramaean population from Syria. And it's not a definitive fact if Abraham was a Sumerian as well, but Sumerians didn't even speak a Semitic language. Sumerians spoke an isolated language. But anyways,
exactly.
So just to address that part, well, I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. I know you want to interrupt me, but let me finish my points. All right. So when it comes to Afro-Asiatic, that is a language, but it's also a people group, and DNA is connected to it when it comes to the first Afro-Asiatic peoples. I actually have a paper that can illustrate this because it seems like I don't want people to just think that I'm making stuff up. So I want to actually show people where YAP Gang gets this from. So I'm sharing my screen, which will actually deal with it. This is the paper, Y Chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution and implication to the origin of Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralism. So we're going to read the abstract, and I don't want to take up too much time. So I'm going to read the relevant portion right here. It says, the Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the E-P2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to different major population groups, including current speakers of the Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralist populations. There's various papers that will illustrate that Afro-Asiatic people, the very first Afro-Asiatic speakers, would be E markers. And as a matter of fact, to this very day, most Afro-Asiatic peoples carry haplogroup E. Take the Berbers or the Amazigh. They carry E-M81 specific. And Berber is an Afro-Asiatic language, by the way. And they carry up to 90% haplogroup E. Modern day Egyptians, they carry a very high portion of EM78. The Kushites in Eastern Africa, like Somalis, Ethiopians, Eritreans, they carry very specific E mark. I didn't interrupt you when you was talking. They carry very specific E-V32 markers. And then, of course, you have Middle Eastern populations that carry high amounts of E. You also see J there, but they also carry E markers. You find various E markers in ancient times. But I also want to address your statement on the Natufians. Even though I didn't mention them, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about them now. Whether Natufians came from Africa or not, when it comes to Afro-Asiatic, it can also have its origins in Africa. You have people like Christopher Ehret, who states that Afro-Asiatic could have originated in the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea area. You have various other linguists that talk about how Afro-Asiatic could have originated in North Africa during the Green Sahara. And you also have people who say Afro-Asiatic could have originated in the Levant with the Natufians. I can bring that up as well. As a matter of fact, there's people who will say that Natufians are the best representatives as being the antecedents to Semitic peoples. And you heard that right. People will say that Natufians could be the ancestors of Proto-Semitic populations. I can bring up those sources.
All right,
And if
bro,
that's the case, we know
interact
that
getting a
Natufians
little
had
long
haplogroup.
when
You know,
you're
it's
making
interesting. When you were speaking, I never interrupted you, but you're trying to interrupt me now. Interesting. So what's interesting about the Natufians is that they carried haplogroup E. So if Natufians are the ancestors of Semitic people, then the early Semitic people would have carried E markers. And as a matter of fact, there are papers and articles and websites you can look at that actually explain this. I'll just pull one up really quick as an example. And it's going to be from EUpedia. And I'm going to read this right here, which talks about Proto-Semitic. It says right here, when it comes to Proto-Semitic, starting right here at this line, it says E-Shem 34 is the main Middle Eastern variety of E1B1B, and it's thought to have arrived with Proto-Semitic people in the late Copper to early Bronze Age. So when I'm talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the Israelites being E markers, I'm not just saying that to be saying that. We believe this to be true based on the academia that we're following. And yeah.
Okay. Proto-Semitic means before Semitic, but there's a little bit of history that people needs to know, right? And we got to understand scientific racism and terminology at this time was based on a Bible view. Afro-Asiatic is a modern term. Does anybody know what the original term was before they were using Afro-Asiatic? Before they were using Afro-Asiatic, they were using a term called Hamito-Semitic, right? But then they got together later on and said, we can't use this because the Bible view of the world is not accurate. But because Christianity dominated the world at the time, and I'll bet anybody $5,000 if you just look up the origin of Afro-Asiatic, you'll see that it was changed recently by a specific person from Hamito-Semitic because the world had a Christian view and was dominated by the Catholic Church. Hamito-Semitic. So they viewed these people as either Hamites or Shemites. And eventually Shemite becomes Semite. Right?
Oh, I believe that.
And so when we use these terms, you got to have the proper space and time. There's no such thing as an Afro-Asiatic people.
Hey, so brother, real quick.
Hold on, brother. Hold on. You didn't want you was.
Hold on, no, that's not him. That's my man. That's my co-host. Hold on a second, Dunamis. You see my text?
Man, I can't hear it, but if you got to step away, I can hold it down for a while.
All right.
All
right. Go ahead. You want to let him? I'm sorry, I muted him. Go ahead.
Yeah, brother. You can go now. You can go. I'll wait.
Yeah, so there's no Afro-Asiatic people. See, this is a way of them taking away from Africa's glory by throwing Asiatic in there. These people came from Africa. You know, if you follow the scientific and migrated patterns, they migrated out of Africa, and there was no major changes unless you're talking about the Ice Age, which is 12,000 years ago when people got caught up in the ice and then they mutated and all that type of stuff. These are the same people. What a genetic marker is what I want y'all to know. When you talk about haplogroup E, this is not necessarily a change in phenotype or appearance. A mark is just like you take a pen and put a little mark on a piece of paper. It's just a little mutation on the Y or the X chromosome. These are the same people. They are Africans. Later on, these people that come in from Western Asia, they come in and mix. And then you get this development of this whatever Middle Eastern people. When the Europeans come out of the Eurasian steppe down into the Levant, you had a migration in early 1500 and what some call the Aryan migration. But before this, it was a Cushitic people who was all in these areas. That's why you have something called Indo-Kush. Even the Sumerian people at the time he was talking about would have been Cushites. Now, the other time he talking about the Chaldeans, you have something called the Amorite period. Look up the third Amorite period. This is when you have your so-called Semites invading the area and take it over. You know what I'm saying? So there's just a lot of history here. And what I just want African people to know is you're the greatest people. You don't need to be any of these people. Everything they got is from you. The civilization was laid down before these people walked out of the goddamn cold, out of the ice box. You would lay down.
So I'm just gonna throw something into that.
Wait, hold on,
And I
Ibri.
just want somebody to
Do you have any sources
correct me
to
on
that?
Yeah,
Brother-
it's funny that you mentioned that, Dunamis, because I was about to say he's doing a lot of talking but not showing. Because when I addressed him, I came with sources, Proto-Afro-Asiatic being E-P2.
Well, the thing that I'm
Proto-Semitic
curious
being
about is the whole
Afro-E.
thing when people say Israel's not Africa.
No, that's it. You can take it. I was just saying that he provided no sources, but I did. So.
No. Real quick, let me jump in.
Yeah,
Lex,
isn't Israel on the North
real-
African plate? Isn't Israel on the North African plate?
Technically, yes.
Yeah, but
that tectonic doctrine.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, deal with these super chats now. Don't let them run amok. Deal with these super chats. I'm gonna pull up Damon Richardson.
All right. More if you just read the super chat and address you go to your point.
Charles Jordan said, "I'm trying to understand why only through religion and culture we understand who Hebrews are, and thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone, any significance." Because material culture is very important to this thing, right? Like, so you can do it. So this is where Lex's point in terms about just pointing to a haplogroup is in and of itself isn't going to get you to be an Israelite or whatnot, right? It's very important to understand that part, because like unless you can demonstrate material culture, yeah, people are going to fall away, cool, but like even in the Islamic sources, when the people fall away, they still identify as being Jews, man. Like, so there's ways to, again, they're going to cling to some level of an identity when that's still material culture, whatnot, right? That's a very important conversation, whatnot. To the genetic question of like, so Lex, we're old friends, by the way. If you're going to say that another genetic, like, so you're saying E was in the Levant, then you said E went into Africa, whatnot. Then you said later on this Middle Eastern whatever invasion came in and imparted this Levantine DNA or whatever, whatnot.
And y'all ain't tell them it's a Christian channel. Y'all ain't text them you can't come here cursing God. Y'all ain't told them that.
Yeah, that's how Lex Vortex thinks that he has the whole like YHWH is Satan doctrine, right?
Wow.
Yeah, he got that whole doctrine, like 100%. He's somebody I used to debate in the conscious community. He was part of a group of people that their into their group was you had to burn the Bible or whatnot, right? So we had a group called the Yahweh War Machine, where we had Christians, we had Israelites, we had Islamic Israelites, etc. All like Torah only, Messianic, Islamic Israelites, and Christians.
Oh, you should have never told these stumpers he's part of a group. You got to burn the Bible. That you should.
So we banded together to protect the Bible, right? Like we're like, no, we're going to do this, and we were debating him and his whole crew for a long time and whatnot, right? So he's getting introduced to stuff that he's not heard before, right? Because it's the same stuff like Damon Richardson and whatnot, right? Like this is stuff he's not really sat down and digested and whatnot, right? And this is why I'm asking this simple question. I know because I know he's listening. So if you're going to propose this haplogroup concept, right, in terms of like, okay, you can't use E, you got to tell me what haplogroup came in and gave us this Levantine DNA, whatnot, right? And in and of itself is going to defeat your own argument, whatnot, right? But you're already acknowledging that E was in the Levant and E came into Africa, and that's why, like, when my man says Proto-Semitic, you might as well just say basal, fam. Like a base population thereof, right? But to that effect, like, so he asked a really good question about material culture, and this is why I want to sit down. If I could I share like 6 slides?
Proto doesn't mean before, by the way. Proto means first. He said,
right. That's why I'm saying base. You make it a base thing.
Yeah, I'm like, proto means before. No, it means first. What are you talking about?
Yeah, 100%. Facts. But he's right in asking the question about material culture. And a lot of people ask this question in the conscious community, right? And when we battled them for years on this concept, right? Again, people burning the Bible and all that type of stuff. And so we stepped back and got into the material culture concept. We had people going to field research, people contacting scholars and whatnot. You'll see me sitting down with Israelites people from claiming to be Israelites from Africa, from East and West Africa, right? From the Igbo to the Lemba, etc. Right? Talking to scholars and all that type of stuff, right? We've been able to uncover material culture for not just Israelite culture in the Americas, but also like Christian culture that came across from, like, when people talk about Vince Matthews saying like, no, Christians came across in the slave trade. No, we find the fingerprints of that, because we can find in certain cultures that were isolated from a lot of invasion from other cultures and whatnot. For instance, like the Gullah culture, right? The Gullah culture in the Americas and whatnot is a very interesting culture to study, because most African cultures in the Americas were underneath the Catholic doctrine and the Catholic set of rules, to where they had to do things a certain way and whatnot. A certain way. In North America, in the United States, that wasn't necessarily the case, and particularly amongst the seacoast part of like South Carolina, Georgia, etc., and other places around that. They were free to do a lot of stuff. There was not a lot of you're forced to do things whatever way. You can see a lot of African culture being preserved there. And what's interesting, though, is the slaves that go there come from this part of West Africa primarily, and they come there in 3 waves. And the first wave is this wave from the Senegambia and Mali, etc., that has this very heavy tradition of being Christian, Muslim, and having Jews there, right? So the first 2 waves of slaves that come into 1.5 actually waves that come in to make the Gullah culture whatnot, they're not from this part of Africa that does the African spirituality. That part actually comes in later, and that's why it's important to look at this culture, because you can actually really see the fingerprints. You can see the fingerprints of the African Islam that came across from West Africa to here. You can see the fingerprints of the African Christianity that came across from West Africa to here. You can see the fingerprints of the African Judaism that came across from West Africa to here. And so that's why it's super important. Like, we should sit down and have this dialogue, because there's no reason to beef. We can talk about theology and whatnot. That's its own conversation. If we're talking about history and facts and genetics and all, that's another conversation.
Hey, I'm Moore and Avery. I had to step away for a second. I heard you guys going back and forth with the other guy. Did he drop off?
Yes, either you dropped off or Brent booted him. Because I think he might have said something about God. God that was a bit unsavory, which is